Welcome to the Next Gen CMO podcast, where we sit down with seasoned CMOs and emerging talents in sales and marketing to explore the wins and occasional losses that shape today's leaders and the strategic maneuvers that can help propel you to the forefront of B2B marketing.
All right, welcome back to another episode of our Next Gen CMO podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome back my favorite recurring guest and my partner in crime, John Eitel, our Chief Sales Officer over at Demandbase. Hey, John.
Hey, Kelly. So good to be here. It's the highlight of my week as well. So thank you for saying that. I'm glad it's, both directions here. But yeah, excited to dive into things with you.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been a few weeks since we chatted on here. So we've got a lot of things to cover. One of the big ones that we both experienced was the Big Forrester B2B Summit. John and I, for our listeners, are both Austin-based. Forrester was here, so it was nice to be on our home turf for the whole week. But what'd you think? I think you started at Demandbase when Forrester hit a year ago. So a year later, new Forrester, new Demandbase. What was your take?
Yeah, and as I say, good memory and recollection. So I started, for context, I started right before Forrester last year, probably about a month prior. And so it was really probably like the first big industry events that I got to show up, at as Demandbase, which was really cool. And, really great to, be, on the other side, coming from the customer side to being kind of the, brand side, working with, clients, prospects, everybody there. And so fun, I would say, for my onboarding. And I know you said maybe the same thing happened for you this go round, but the amount of speed dating conversations you can have over a period of 2 days is just incredible. Like the, breakfast, lunch, dinner, meetings in between, evenings, really, was great. And I think it just kind of helped coalesce a lot of the challenges that our clients are facing, some of the things that our partners are, going through and solving for their clients as well, and helping us jointly to work together. It just, made everything kind of come together. And so, in that same kind of vein, this was a year later coming back and having, the knowledge of, all the stuff that we've been working on and things that we are doing, probably a little bit more grasp of, our vision, strategy, and product. And so really, I would say was a fun one to be a part of, especially with that kind of, first watermark of when I started into now, where we are and, how we are a totally different team. We've got, you and I together partnered up, which has been, a lot of fun. So kind of new CSO, CMO pairing, some other new additions. It just seems like we're getting stronger and stronger, and also more in tune with, the needs of our customers, which was kind of fun. How about for you? What was kind of your feelings in your first one there?
Yeah, it was my first Forrester as the CMO of Demandbase. And to be honest, it was kind of my first Forrester, which is surprising given that I live in Austin and I'm a marketer, and it's got so much rich marketing content. I've always gone to the activities, like I've gone to the breakfast for a vendor or a prospect or something. So I've had meetings around Forrester, just never really been inside and saw the trade show floor and saw the momentum and the traffic and the conversation. And then, of course, with us, we had the booth inside, but we also had the cafe across the street. And like you said, there was just so much energy. I loved it. So I had, a whole bunch, like 2 full days of customer meetings, partner meetings, whatever. And it was just great because I don't know about quantity of folks on the floor, but there was definitely it attracts the right folks. It attracts key decision makers in sales and marketing, partners, people who want to invest in technology or who want to build relationships and integrate tech together. And people want to talk about trends. They want to talk about business. They want to talk about opportunities. I just loved it. I left feeling exhausted, but completely just energized and invigorated. I think the big themes I heard, buying groups was definitely a big part of the conversation. We had started talking about buying groups a year ago, from what I can gather, at the last Forrester. But everybody was talking about it here. I think the value in this economy of marketing to your existing customers or understanding the value of retention is so valuable because of people being, having trepidation about spending money. I was talking to our Forrester analyst this morning, and she said that people are taking 75%, what was the stat? I think 75% longer to make a decision, a purchasing decision than they were a year ago. Last year, that number was 67%. So the numbers are going up. People are taking longer. They're more hesitant. Buying groups are that thing that kind of says, hey, we're going to hit all the key influencers in your organization. So you have more kind of groundswell at your customer site that you know that your CFO is on board, your CEO has heard of the vendor, that your CSO is in lockstep with you, that you're all together and bought in on the direction. And I think that's super powerful. So I love the idea that it was a big theme, that demand-based is part of the solution, but it's this recognition that holding on to retaining existing customers, getting new ones, comes from the whole company being bought in on the direction.
Yeah. No, I would say like it is, been interesting to watch this, kind of come to fruition. But yeah, buying groups was about, was everybody's, kind of talk. Felt like it played a role, or was an element of it there, and I think it matches exactly to what's going on in the world today. Purchasing decisions are definitely elongating. They're getting more complex. CFOs are being brought in. They're having the best, best years of their lives. It seems like, making sure that, companies are buying effectively. And so, buying groups really does prepare you for that. It does, take into account that this is it's more of a committee-based decision process. And, those that win are the ones that figure that out and, have the right attack plan to make sure that they cover off their entire audience.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Another theme I think we saw was, or what we heard, I mean, I'd love to hear how your conversations went, your one-on-ones, but I feel like sales and marketing alignment became a bigger theme this year, or maybe people are finally maybe putting words to it, or recognizing that tension and the inhibitor that is to not getting business done if you don't do it right. What you heard in your conversations.
Yeah, and as I said, actually, let me just debunk a myth. It's, it sounds like you and I only wait for these podcasts to talk. We do talk a lot in between. So
not a conversation.
But no, kidding completely there. But that was exactly it. I think that is, something you and I talk a lot about. It's, obviously the premise and, foundation of why we get these, kind of windows to talk together about things that each of us are facing. I'd say the collective, world is out there feeling it too. It really was apparent. I do feel like, the sales and marketing relationship, it's always, had its challenges, and it's always ebbed and flowed. And I think this is definitely a time where there is a lot of like tension in the relationship. It just felt like, more folks came to the base lounge to, asking for help on, how do we get the other counterparts to engage, who's doing it really well in our, account base, and, who could we, kind of use as a model to stand up and learn from. And so it was really fun to be able to lean in and, talk about that, because I think there is not only a lot of, interest and, conversations being had around this topic, but I think actually both parties are showing up wanting to make a change, which I think is also like something that I find, really inspiring, helping, others go through this transition and change and reconnect maybe. There were sales teams showing up, at Forrester, which is predominantly thought of as a marketing conference for a more marketing audience. And I was meeting with heads of, Rev Ops, VPs of sales, who were equally just as interested in thinking about like ways to improve the relationship, which is, I think, a great sign. I think actually some customers even, like, you got to attend some of the panels, but I think some of the customers were bringing that up too, some of their themes.
Yeah. I mean, we hosted Workday, who is one of our demand-based customers, who shared their case study leveraging demand-based and the value it provided in bringing, or it currently provides, of bringing sales and marketing together. And what they talked a lot about was when they were just starting on their ABM journey, they knew that they needed sales buy-in on some of it. So they went and handpicked like 6, I think it was 6. I might be making up that number, but for some reason that number's in my head. But they handpicked a handful of sellers who they felt like were key influencers in the company, and they brought them on the ABM journey with them. And so as they were onboarding it, as they were integrating the data, as they were identifying the target accounts and the plays and the programs, they had sales buy-in from that. And then it spread, right? Those 6 folks, or however many, spread it across the organization until they had full sales and marketing alignment. So a lot of folks, I think, ask, how do I do it? How do I get sales buy-in? Certainly you want to get, sales leadership buy-in, but even just getting those key on the ground sales influencers bought into the direction from the beginning is incredibly powerful. So that was kind of cool to hear. Yeah. Awesome. So last month we talked a little bit, following Adobe, about the value of face-to-face. And so just out of the spirit of the meetings face-to-face last week, how do you think that changes, like, I don't know, that relationship. Like when you meet with a prospect face to face, does it change how fast the deal cycle flows after that? Does it change the trust? Does it change the pace with which they return phone calls? Like, what does that do?
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think there is this like thirst and, I'd say hunger for connection in person, right? I think that was one thing that really stood out again, kind of back-to-back conferences is that, we are back in person, and it really is something that people are, looking for. And it's, been fun to watch, how it does accelerate the relationship. It, accelerates transfer of ownership in like the sales process, where people start to like see themselves as a customer because they're interacting with you in real person, as a real person. They're getting to see, what a back and forth would look like, and, how you respond to things, and so I think it is really important. Even more so, I think actually, just another trend that, is being, talked a lot about is AI, but I think in the, kind of world of AI, and as we think about where it plays, you're obviously seeing a lot more content being created as a side effect to this. And, I think it actually has put more and more emphasis on, like genuineness of human connection, like being able to show up in person. So I do think, another kind of like, I would say a checkbox in the pro column of like face-to-face really does, work. As we all know, it's great to see that we're getting back in the process of it. But I think it more so matters, one, because we got out of practice with it, so we're getting back to it. And then also, there's, a lot of, moments of, content being created by a digital assistant here. And so if we can take some moments to be human, those are the things that make you stand up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's right with our customers or future customers and partners, but also with each other, as part of sales and marketing alignment. You and I have talked about before that, like the term, like, does the sales team get along with the marketing team? Like, that's one thing that's sort of nebulous, like, whatever. But it's like, does Kelly get along with John, the guy? Like, does Kelly, the marketer, get along with John, the seller? Like, that's a human. Like, that's not this like sort of nebulous, org. And so even spending time at the Forrester event, like getting to hang out with like, Gray or Devin or these actual individual sellers face to face, like hopefully all of that opens up sales and marketing alignment. We're building relationships with each other because we're talking face to face. And now it's not just the sales team I'm working with. It's Gray, the seller that I'm working with, is a very real human and a very nice person. And, so I think that's pretty powerful. Yeah. Okay. Relationships. So because you mentioned relationships a while ago, and as we're talking about this, so there was some research that came out recently, and one of them said that 50% of B2B buyers said they bought from a salesperson even after the seller switched companies. So as you think about your sales team and they're building relationships, they're bringing relationships over from their previous companies. They may take that relationship with them to the next company. But it's all grounded in the fact that you trust the person that you're buying from, or you trust the relationship you're building. So you think that, like, is this data telling us that the relationship with like the seller is going to be like, it should guide us, it should help us coach them, it should build our relationships, we should coach them differently? Like, how does your team, like, how does that fit into your training and enablement for your sellers?
Yeah, like I think it's it seems like that maybe not that earth-shattering of a stat at first when you think about it. Like, I think, and I guess my brain goes back to like people buy from people. Like, that's always like the old adage that comes to mind. But again, I think it's important because we've shifted a lot, for the last few years, and we're kind of like, a pendulum swinging back and forth in a lot of ways, right? And so I do think like some comments that come to mind as I think about it is, probably if you looked at these stats, a few years ago, everybody got really comfortable buying digitally without a human interaction, right? It was just easier, it was faster, right? We were gearing for speed. And I think now that we've, probably gone to a more like cost cautious mindset, we are trying to make sure we think about every transaction and slow it down and make sure we're getting use out of it. And so I think the time spent with humans, matters. Again, back to the people buy from humans. But it is interesting too, like one other kind of side note I take from that is, you think about people making a purchasing decision and they choose demand-based, or they choose, Salesforce or HubSpot, or Outreach or SalesLoft. But, what that data tells me also is they don't just choose you as a brand, they choose the salesperson probably just as much, these days. And I think that's something to be aware of. I think that, the rise of B2B influencers, we talk a lot about that as well. And I do feel like, that's why it's so important to make sure that your brand is coming across in social and, you're able to connect with people in digital formats that way. And it matters. I think, individuals, we've got sellers on our team that have, bigger followings sometimes than you or I and almost rival the demand-based brand. Right. And so it is interesting too, to think about, the importance of those folks and putting them, in a place to shine and, tapping into and harnessing that. I think that, the connection and genuineness matters. And so if it's, them being able to connect with demand-based plus, Gray Fuller, who's on the team here, that's the winning formula. And I think it's something to be cognizant of. I think, it's even in, my early days selling, I remember, when we were at Rackspace, and I kind of came up with the story of the Rackspace buyer alumni, but it was, folks that had chosen us at other companies, and then they moved to a different company and, just immediately called me up and said, "Hey, John, like, let's do this again, really enjoyed the relationship." And so, it's a really helpful thing to be aware of, to understand, and to harness, because I think it can be, the way that you really grow your customer base. Right now, people are changing companies, another trend we're seeing quite frequently. And so if you can make those connections at scale and reinforce them, it's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the reverse of that is when it's not, our sellers who have switched, but it's when our marketing champions have switched companies. The goal is that you hope that they take our product with them from company to company, and they continue to buy, demand-based over and over and over, which is certainly the goal. And that's why it's not about, again, marketing to groups. It's about marketing to humans, individuals that you're developing that relationship with. So
it extends out to, as I say, like, I think you and I immediately, talk about like the immediate touch points in sales and marketing. But I think, the really great thing is just looking at, feedback. And, one of the analyst reviews we got back, there were several comments about, how great the account team was, like how powerful, like individuals they called out, in the commentary that supported their accounts were. And it's such an important tell to realize that, like, again, people buy from people, harness that, use it to your advantage, but that doesn't necessarily just begin or doesn't just end at the, at the early decision. Like, it carries throughout them as they become a customer and, continue to work with you there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of that, let's talk about humans. Personalization. It's kind of a big deal because you also, I think, mentioned a digital assistant or something a few minutes ago, and about the trade-off of digital assistant versus the face-to-face. Research came out that says 78% of buyers strongly agree that outreach to them should be personalized. Now, there's a lot of powerful tools that can personalize and can make the system feel very unique to them, call them by name, talk about their company, talk about their needs. But how are you guys using personalization in sales? Is it truly one-to-one personalized? Is it automated but with great insights? What are you doing?
Yeah, look, I think that's the key. I think there is so much change, again, going on. I'm going to be broken record bit today here, but I just feel like selling has become more and more challenged, right? I think we talked about, like, people who connect with people win, but I think making that connection can be really hard when you're doing a lot of prospecting and trying to get interest from very busy people, right? And so, I think that was one of the things that we saw the rise of, in the past few years too, was the use of a lot of these automation tools, probably handed down in the wrong ways to probably users who shouldn't have had the power in their hands in the first place. And, my running joke is that, they load up the spam cannon and fire it out at, 1,000 customers hoping to get, responses. And so in some ways that probably caused the problem we're dealing with, the overuse of some of these automations, because it's real easy to just click a button and send, emails in mass quantity. But we all, see that now. I feel like I can actually see it in my inbox. Like, my eyes can now filter, what was written for me and what was just sent as a, kind of mass send here. And I don't even respond, to it, even give it probably more than a few seconds. And so, like, the key is standing out, making sure that you are, hyper personalized. You've taken time to research, the buyer on the other end. Like, that's always the question I get is, like, what do I respond to? It's like the one thing that felt like it was, written for me, that knew my challenges as well. Like, I think, like, great, you figured out what school I went to. That's awesome that my alma mater. But are you aware of the things that I'm, kind of looking at, might be searching for? Those are things that really are powerful. So it means that you can kind of get in the mind of John Eitel for a bit and say, this is something that's keeping John up at night. And so I think it's like, doing fewer actions, but with like high value and impact there, so we are talking a lot about that with the teams today about, really not sending hundreds or thousands of emails. How do we send, 10 to 20, but make sure that they are, really well crafted, to an audience that is willing or maybe in the market for our product there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. My funny stories recently, the only ones I've really ever responded to is when they offered me breakfast tacos. I'm not sure why.
This begins the day that you get a bunch of emails and email for
we'll see.
Yeah, mark the day.
To see how many people are listening from that, right? But yeah, that was one I responded to. And then my favorite one I just got recently was from a company that seemed to personalize it. Dear Kelly, blah, 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 blah. We know about what you're struggling with at demand-based. And then what their offer was, have I ever considered account-based marketing? Which I thought was really funny. I'm like, you're trying to sell me what we do. And I wrote back, I said, do you know what demand-based does? And then she was like, well, she kind of stuttered through and sent me something. And then I just deleted it. But I just thought it was so funny trying to sell me something that we do, which made me laugh. But yeah.
Occasionally too, I was going to say from competitors even where I'm like, oh my gosh, did someone skip a step here?
We missed a filter in our account list.
Take me off your list. But
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned so many tools. So I'm going to go into this because I think the data is pretty fascinating. So the new MarTech landscape report came out this week, and it has an outrageous amount of MarTech products. It says that there are now 14,106 MarTech products. I'd like to think that maybe is RevTech because that seems outrageous if it's just marketing technology, but still 14,000. For reference, it was much less in prior years. So, I mean, what's happening in the industry that we can keep? I mean, if 3,000 new MarTech products since a year ago, we were only at 1,000 10 years ago. Now we're at 14,000, 14x in 10 years. Like, what do you think is going on? Where are all these tools coming from? Like, what's the end game for these guys?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I've been a fan of that report and watched it for years. And I do believe like it's a fun one to look at just to see, all the expansion. I was probably taken aback, if I'm honest, when I saw, how vast, it had gotten already this year. And I probably need to spend some more time dissecting because it doesn't align to what I know is, happening in the world. Like I do feel like as we go through, a tough economy and the rise of all these solutions, like you start to wonder, like, do we need another point solution? Don't we have these needs covered? You hear a lot of like the, maybe the collapsing and condensing. And so, that's going to be happening too, but it really, it blew my mind a bit. I, often think too that, some of the problems that, many of our audience is, feeling and, facing is it's gotten so, so hard to be a seller at companies because, we all bought a bunch of these solutions and then we didn't integrate them. And so it does worry me a little bit of thinking about how to integrate, that many at that scale, really does, it makes me fear for the sellers of tomorrow. And I think there's probably going to be some maybe, collapsing of that list over time. I think that we talk a lot about maybe this, year is the year of like a lot of folks kind of huddling to stay warm and, kind of coming together and mergers and acquisitions probably will continue. And maybe that's, one part of this. There will, unfortunately be some fallout, right? I think this is, it's a tough time to be in this space because I think, buyers have a lot of decisions. 1,400, obviously. So 14,000. So it's like getting to be, a bit daunting. And I think, the ones that do it well will stand out, but I think we'll see some, consolidation, some collapsing of this maybe over time, even some roll up as we think about like go-to-market systems, especially facilitated, through, Salesforce, HubSpot, Dynamics, when they start to roll out these AI co-pilots, do these become, kind of bolt-ins to those and make them accessible and integrated there?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's true. There are these products being launched from within sort of parent companies. And then there's these like Copilot, and then there's these products being launched kind of as these bootstrapped or VC backed startups that are coming up with this tech. It's been pretty interesting. I think all of me hopes that it's to solve real customer challenges. I think there's probably also the reality of, I don't know what is happening right now still, but I would say over the past few years, while there's just been an obnoxious amount of venture capital in the system, funding and overfunding these little tiny ideas at pretty just stupid valuations, like 25x kind of numbers. Now I think it's level set more at 7 to 10, but it'll be interesting to see like how many of these companies not only consolidate, to your point, or get rolled up and absorbed by bigger companies, or just plain go out of business because they can't survive in this economy with the high cost of acquisition, low brand awareness, and the sort of drying up of some of the VC funds. So it'll be interesting to see where the market continues to go, because right now it's growing faster than it's consolidating. But I think we all expected that, only the strong will survive and that consolidation will happen.
Yeah, totally. Something we got to keep a watchful eye on, and I think to think about as this, kind of market shifts and changes, in this, kind of this new wave of doing things.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on sales and marketing budgets, to be honest, right? Because we've got to be able to buy all these tools that are coming out. We've got to be able to pay for these things. So there was the LinkedIn and Ipsos did this research recently, and they said that B2B budgets are actually making a comeback. So we've all watched compression the last probably certainly into 22, all of 23, going into 24. But now it's saying 64% of B2B buyers expect a budget increase this year. Only 8% expected to decrease, which is crazy. Because we're all trying to get, it's just a new art form that we all have, which is how to do more with less, how to get as scrappy as possible, how to make more dollars work as hard as possible in the market. So this is great news. And so maybe that's how it's supporting these extra 3,068 products that launched last year. But where do you think all this money's going?
Yeah, I would say hallelujah to that, data point. And I think, look, we're starting to see that as well. And so I think, it is good. I feel like you and I have talked about the years leading up to this, where, it was like 2022 was the, kind of beginnings of like the how do we do more with less. 2023 was like, no, we really mean it. You got to do more with less. And it became painful, right? I think that's where we felt a lot of the pains, and, we made a lot of the easier cuts in the beginning, and now it was, the deeper cuts. And I feel like 2024, hopefully, there's a little bit of the recoil now back to some, semblance of normal here. And so, I'm curious to see where it flows to as well. I do think that there is, a little bit of like, weirdness, just even, as we kind of near almost the halfway point of this year, that it was optimistic, but cautious optimism, budgets starting to come up. I think that's a good thing. Hopefully it is with the vendors that are, really well entrenched, right? It's this, kind of doubling down where you're seeing the value now that we've really kind of tightened up our stacks and really focused on that, while probably letting in a few, kind of newer pieces, right? What's been missing all along that you just could never even like bring yourself to bring it up with the CFO. Maybe this is the time to think about new things. The trends that we're seeing too, that I think got to parlays into this too, is like, I think outbound is having a great year as well. I think the resurgence of outbound, is definitely I hear and talk a lot about with my kind of sales counterparts and brethren. I do feel like changing, your mindset around pipeline, like how do you have like a relentless, mindset around building pipeline? And that's a you and I problem, right? It's not just a me or you problem. And so I think the, moving away from like inbound models, to, kind of inbound, outbound, hybrid, putting equal kind of pressure on both sides of the equation here, I think is what's going to happen. So I think those tools will probably see, more and more resurgence, the ones that get you the, the data at your fingertips to be more active outbounding, things that give you more, options of, understanding intents and signals of who's ready to buy, right? I think that's the way to do it, in a very smart fashion. And I think that's what everybody's looking for right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being able to operate efficiently with the dollars you have means you work to make every single dollar count, focusing on the right audience at the right time, the right place, in all the different ways. So I think that's great. I wonder, as I'm thinking literally at this moment about this sort of swing, right? A few years ago, I think probably post-COVID, when folks expected the market to plummet, it actually took off, right? 21 was one of the best years. And it was like grow at all costs. And then there was sort of this recession that hit, and you kind of dry up and you say, nope, we're cutting all the spend, we're cutting all the budget. And as a result, like, yes, your costs are less, but also your growth rates go down considerably. And I wonder if now there's a little bit of a pivot that says, actually, it's probably somewhere in between. Like it's I've heard you use the phrase, the self-fulfilling prophecy of if we don't invest more dollars in the top line, we're going to keep missing our revenue, then we're going to keep missing our bottom. And then we're going to end up at the end of the day, you sort of dry up. I think that's what a lot of companies do in a time like this. Instead of saying, hey, it's probably not either or, probably do need to be smarter in how you invest, but you probably also do need to invest in order to continue to grow your top line. But if you're smarter about it, hopefully you have enough coming off the bottom to reinvest in the top, and that you slowly kind of strategically and profitably build your top line versus kind of drying up both in the process.
Yeah. I think it is. It's the, not a very binary decision of like, you spend and grow or you don't and, kind of steady. I think it is kind of that good mix or hybrid approach to both here.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time. Exciting time to be a marketer. Exciting time to be a seller. Exciting time to be right in the middle of both of them. So thanks for doing that with me.
It is. I was going to say, like, I think, you probably get the same questions and I'm curious how you respond. I feel like I got a very Hopping-esque answer in my mind right now, but I think like there's always that question of like, how is it to be, kind of out there fighting the good fight, in the, kind of world of B2B SaaS right now. And, it is trying. I do think that it is, been really, always changing, very dynamic, up, down, sideways, new things emerging. So I think the, important thing is like find people to talk to for, solace and also just like to learn through their experiences. I feel like I'm staying close to lots of peers, but I feel like actually my, mind is alive in a lot of ways. And like, I'm excited about, what's going to emerge out of this, like the changes that we are seeing and witnessing, do remind me of like the early days of like the .com, era, like the days that I got my first iPhone and how it made this like, big change. And so I think some of these like tectonic shifts of, AI, plus, some of these, kind of tools coming together to become like a full stack solution, like this is going to be pretty amazing. And so I'm excited to see, what the future holds. So though it's been hard, I would say I'm, optimistic and bullish and, excited to help our teams navigate this. Curious how you feel about it. Like I said, I've got a hopping answer in my mind, but I'm sure it's very positive.
Yes, it could be positive, and also it could be totally random if you, as you know from me. But I think, I think what's just hard to recognize is, I know that the change is inevitable. So, I remember starting my career and it was a print and TV era. And that's where I spent all of my media dollars. The thought of investing in digital seemed crazy and a waste of money. Fast forward 10 years, digital, obviously a big thing, but the thought of like, running full marketing automation platforms or account-based marketing platforms, all that kind of seemed crazy and expensive and not sure how it affects my business. What are my marketers going to do? How is it personalized? And then 10 years later, completely normal, totally expected. It's table stakes for running your business. And I think now that's where AI is going to be 10 years from now. I think it's going to be so ingrained. Right now, it's sort of people dabbling. They'll say, well, my content team uses a little Gen AI or whatever they do. But now it's really about, how do we, we're all using AI, whether we know it or not, in all of our platforms. That's what turns data into insights into action for ABM. Like it's all AI driven. And so just thinking about the next 10 years, I'm sure that's what's driven this surgence of new tech is all these possibilities with AI. I think the ones that are going to rise to the top are going to be the ones who actually solve a customer problem. You can do AI for AI's sake, but if you're not actually like the so what is what matters, right? And how do we get from AI technology to real value add in customer solving? I think that's going to be the next decade of marketing acceleration and MarTech consolidation is how we can kind of get that figured out. And then I think as a marketer, just because you kind of mentioned about how it is, I think right now it's hard. I'm not going to lie. Like a CMO from 20 years ago is not the same CMO today. It used to be about brand. We used to call them kind of ivory tower CMOs. It was sort of brand and comms and PR. And now it's like, they kind of call them T-shaped marketers. You have to go broad with all the different functions of marketing, but you also have to go deep into the data, understanding the MarTech, understanding the stack, understanding all the conversion rates, understanding the pushes and pulls of moving accounts through the pipe. it's much more complex. And marketing used to be sort of this, I don't know, sort of G&A function. Now it's a critical path to revenue. And so the ability to kind of, as a marketing leader, to be both the CEO and the COO of marketing is sort of the way I think about it, is it's a challenge. And I think what you're starting to see is, as I didn't ask this, but I'll tell you my thoughts, is that as CMOs emerge and move through, I think you're going to see them either go back to becoming VPs of revenue marketing because they're like, man, that CMO thing is for the birds. Like, I'm stretched in 1,000 different directions. Or they're going to thrive in it and love kind of being a part, like a broader business athlete and a part of the whole business strategy instead of just sort of holed up in a marketing corner. So anyway, it's a fascinating time to be a marketing leader, and all this tech just kind of makes it all the more fun. So
you said something interesting, I think, in a conversation we had previous, but I mean, basically you're also not only adapting as a professional and figuring out kind of these new facets and capacities, but you're marketing, predominantly to a buyer that's not you anymore, right? And that's a big tectonic shift there.
I mean, yeah, the fact that buyers are, millennials in I won't say a decade, but they're a few years younger than me. Then, yeah, I mean, they have a different expectation of a digital experience, self-serve, PLG, don't talk on the phone. Like, they've got, different behaviors that we as marketing and sales leaders have to tap into, and like, okay, well, how do we meet them where they are and the way that they like to buy to make sure that we're relevant to a new generation of buyers? So, okay, we're almost done. Lighten the mood real quick though. Did you watch Game 7 last night? The Denver versus Minnesota game.
I knew you were going to ask that, and unfortunately I did not. And I feel like, as you say, we talk a lot about sports as sports and music are kind of like our secondary love language, probably. And yes, I am not tuned out of the kind of the men's finals here. So it has been tough to track with it. I think I'm still kind of a laggard following the Caitlin Clark effect, I guess. Yeah, our new documentary came out on ESPN, but I have tuned out. So I heard I missed a hell of a game.
Yeah, I mean, pretty exciting stuff, which is okay. So the fact that you've switched to WNBA, I'll take the NBA. And we'll agree to disagree on that. Yeah, so last night was Game 7. Denver's the reigning champ. They were up by 20 points. They lost in just a gut-wrench of a game. He was literally mad on ESPN this morning talking about, like, in the press conference after the game. But that was Game 7. So Timberwolves are going on. They're going to play Dallas in the finals. It was fascinating because Anthony Edwards, who is kind of the star, right? He's kind of the big deal. In fact, I didn't realize this. So just to make sure you don't think that I'm a total sports nut, I'm really not. I just kind of pay attention when it gets to playoffs. But my son asked me a few weeks ago, you'll appreciate this as somebody, as we now market to millennials, he said, Anthony Edwards is the greatest basketball player ever. And I said, Goose? And he was like, what? And I was like, you mean Goose from Top Gun? Because that's who Anthony Edwards was.
Yes. A throwback pop culture reference that your son was not making, and you failed miserably in that moment, unfortunately, with him probably.
Yeah, I was like, either Goose or you meant to say Michael Jordan, but I'm not following exactly what you're tracking here. But no, he was talking about Anthony Edwards, obviously the hot new NBA star. He didn't have a great game last night. So he was like 6 for 24. He's normally like a big time scorer, but apparently played just lockdown defense, according to all the critics and all kinds of things this morning. That was sort of the takeaway. And it's just this idea that you always think in basketball, especially think about the LeBron era or some of these, where it's a team sport, but it's really just a solo, like, show off mission, where there's, a lot of hype. Like, this guy showed that, like, it is absolutely a team sport. And if he's not making his shots on offense, he's going to lock down on defense. And I think that's really powerful. I think we're going to see that. We said that in all of our work stuff all the time, that it's absolutely a team sport. We need to be able to flex. It's not a one person driving all this stuff, that we have to work together on this as a leadership team, as a team of marketers, as a team of sellers, as go-to-market teams. And I think that's pretty incredible.
Yep, agreed. No, it is fun. These players are all built differently, is like probably the best way I could put it. And I think like the standouts are just so unique from like the legends that we grew up with here. And so it is kind of fun to see, that implications, and how it shifts the game, and also lots of lessons we can take back to the workplace here.
Yeah, absolutely. That seems like a good place to to call it. What do you think?
It's a wrap. Yeah, I was going to say, no, good checking in and catching up on all things going on in the world. And as always, it's a good, fruitful conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks for chatting. Thanks for coming. Hopefully I'll see you. I'll see you.
Hopefully before the next podcast recording. Yeah, I hope we do. We got end of quarter coming up, hopping. So
I'll see you a lot. But I'll also see you back on this podcast in a few weeks too. So we look forward to that. I know our listeners love it. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our Next Gen CMO podcast, and we will see you next time.